There's an idea referred to as synchronicity in the universe that is pretty commonly referred to, right, in the esoteric, in the spiritual, even in psychology, right? The term was coined by Carl Jung, and he used it to describe many different phenomena throughout the universe, right? Now, what is the traditional definition of synchronicity, right? Synchronicity, the traditional definition is when you have two seemingly unrelated events that can come across as a coincidence, right? So we've all had those moments. I know I've had those moments where, you might be watching TV or you might be going for a walk and you look at your phone and it says 11:11 and you're like, what are the chances I chose to look at my phone and it's 11:11? Like maybe this is a sign from God to make a wish. That's a casual example, but I'm sure you'll have experienced many different examples, possibly from when you've been doing stuff in your life and you haven't been on the right path versus when you've been doing stuff and you possibly been on the wrong path. Maybe you had an event happen to you that seemingly was unrelated, but seemed too coincidental to write off, right? There's a common quote that says there are no such thing as coincidences, which I believe in. I don't believe there's really such thing as coincidences, and I believe that all energy in the universe interacts with each other so that possibly almost any event that can happen to you is probably happening to you for a very specific reason. Maybe because of something you're thinking about doing, or something you might have done, or something you're in the process of doing. Everything happens for a reason. That's something I believe, right? But anyway, um, there is a book called The Kabbalion, written by Hermes Trismegistus, and he writes, seven rules, seven laws of the universe as like a guideline for spiritual growth. And one of the most important rules, and one that I really resonate with, he describes as there is a cause for every effect and an effect for every cause. Chance, there are many different planes of causation, but chance is for a law not recognized. And basically, what he's trying to say is that everything that happens in the universe, there was a cause for it, right? And for every action that you choose to do, there is an effect for it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good or bad. That depends on you. It might be positive or negative, but there's always a cause and effect, right? And no matter how small the action is, no matter how seemingly unconnected events may seem, it's everything is interconnected. And that's basically what he's referring to, right? And he says there's many different ways an event can be connected to another event, right? There's many different planes of causation. But he says chance is for a law not recognized. So he says chance, randomness, probability, something just happening randomly, it's a law that's not recognized by the universe. If something happened, it happened for a reason, right? There's a cause for every effect, right? And I think that's extremely relevant here because when we see things happen to people or when we see certain events take place, some people write it off as like, hey, it's purely coincidental. I'm sure it didn't have anything to do with anything. But, if there's anything we learned, it's just that the entire world is interconnected. And there's other phenomena also described as the butterfly effect where you do one thing in your life and it, like dominoes, it leads to a chain reaction of other things that ripple into your life and also ripple into the universe and have a bunch of surrounding different effects on the surrounding area, right? Even if that action didn't seem like it was too big in hindsight, right? But anyway, Carl Jung coined the term of synchronization. And, he writes about an experience he had where he used to have dreams before World War One, when he was still a lot younger. He used to see a sea and a whole bunch of men just floating in the ocean, and he used to hear whispers in his head, and that this is what's coming, this is what's coming, and he would get visions of a whole bunch of men floating in the ocean, just coming on shore. And he said, shortly after this, he got World War One occurred, and he also describes having these visions quite frequently later into his life, right? Having visions or dreams And there's a lot of different theories on how dreams work, but he likes to describe even his dreams and the visions he's happening as somewhat related and somewhat tied into the universe, something that's like extremely relevant here, and something that's extremely relevant especially when you're deciding to look inward, right? So a whole bunch of coincidences or events in your life can be happening to you for a multitude of reasons, right? If you're focused on doing good, if you're focused on going positive, good will always come back to you. That is the law of karma, and vice versa, right? And this is basically how God is. Now, he speaks about another idea that as you focus on inner work, as you focus on self-development and the individuation process, as you focus on growing, the synchronicities in the universe actually tend to become more powerful and tend to become more frequent. Which means if you're on the right path, if you're deciding to grow spiritually, if you're aligning yourself with God, right? If you're keeping yourself on the right path of looking inward, right? Of growing spiritually, right? Of doing God's designated purpose, right? You're going to experience a lot more synchronicities, a lot more omens, a lot more signs from God that you're on the right path, that He wants you to keep going, and a lot more reward in general when you align yourself with God's path. So that's a short introduction to synchronicity, as assigned by Carl Jung. It's a huge rabbit hole, and it's a we could talk about it a lot more in depth, but that is a short introduction to the idea of synchronicity in the universe, and the idea that there is no such thing as coincidences, and everything happens for a reason.